Chapter 11. The Emberwound Expanse. The earth was cracked open like a wound. They stood at the edge of the Emberwound, where the trees ended and the ash plains began, a stretch of scorched black earth laced with glowing fissures and writhing vents that spat flickers of flame into the sky. It was silent. Not dead, not lifeless, just hungry. "Stay together," Kaelen warned, planting his staff into the earth. "This land feeds on memory." Lyra frowned, pulling her hood low. "Define feeds. You'll forget who you are before you feel it happening." Selene stepped forward first, eyes narrowed against the heat haze that distorted the horizon. "We go fast. Don't stop. Don't look back." Nyx was at her side, his form shadow-solid, his presence constant. He didn't speak, but Selene felt him. Closer than breath, warmer than fire. They entered the Emberwound. The air shimmered as they walked. The further they went, the less the world held shape. Ash draped the ground like snow, but with each step it grew deeper, like walking through the remains of a forgotten city. Then the memories began to slip. At first it was small. Selene blinked and forgot what day it was, then forgot why they had come here, then forgot Rhys's name. She stopped, confused. Her fingers gripped the hilt of her blade, but for a moment she didn't remember why it felt so familiar. Nyx noticed instantly. He touched her shoulder. "Selene," he said, his voice low and steady. She looked up, eyes unfocused. He pressed his forehead gently to hers. "Come back to me." And something inside her remembered. Her name, the way he'd said it the night he first spoke aloud. The feeling of being seen, of being real. The memory anchored her, the haze receded. But only for a moment. Behind them, Lyra staggered. I think my mother's voice is in the ash. I hear her singing." Rhys caught her. "It's not her." Kaelen moved to the center of the group, drawing a circle in the ash with the end of his staff. He whispered in an ancient tongue, and green light sparked from beneath the ground. "Stay close," he ordered. "The land won't eat what's rooted." Isolde dropped to her knees, hands against the earth. "Something's beneath us," she said. "It remembers burning. It's not dead, it's waiting." "Is it the entity?" Selene asked. "No," Isolde whispered. "Something older." They kept moving. Hours or minutes. Time was twisted, passed. Then the Heartglass tree appeared, a single, massive tree of glowing crystal and blackened wood, rising from the middle of a crater. Its branches crackled with golden fire, its roots twisted like veins across the stone. Beneath it, the ash had turned to glass. Selene stopped, it singing. And it was. No words, just sound. A deep harmonic hum, like the memory of a lullaby. Kaelen's eyes narrowed. "It's Riftborn." Lyra tilted her head. "No, not born, bound." Selene stepped forward, drawn to it. The closer she came, the clearer the hum became, and then she saw herself, not in the tree, but inside it. A reflection frozen in the crystal bark, her eyes hollow, her mouth open in a scream. She recoiled. The tree pulsed. Nyx rushed forward, grabbing her arm. "It's not you. It's not now. I know," she breathed, "but it could be." Kaelen reached out and placed a hand against the bark. The runes on his arm glowed, and for a moment he understood. "This was a gate once," he murmured. "A crossing point. When the rift first opened. But it cracked under grief. It absorbed the pain instead of shielding against it." Selene looked back at it. "Can we use it?" Kaelen's jaw tightened. "Yes, but only one person can take its vision. Anyone else will lose too much." Selene looked at the others, then stepped forward. "I'll do it." Thorn and Shadow, the fire had burned low. The others had pulled back to sleep or sit in silence, their minds ragged from ash and memory. Even the wind was quiet. Too quiet. In the Emberwound, the land only breathed when it wanted you to know it was alive. Kaelen sat against a jagged shard of stone, his staff laid across his knees. Moss had begun to creep across his shoulders again, slow and quiet as always. He looked like something the earth had grown by mistake. Across the clearing, Nyx stood alone, half human, half shadow, his form flickering faintly in the rift light, watching, waiting, as he always did. Kaelen didn't move, but he spoke. "You're not a beast," he said quietly. "You never were." Nyx looked over slowly. "You've known for a while. I knew the moment you bled starlight instead of blood." Nyx stepped closer, but not too close. "Then why haven't you said anything until now?" Kaelen's gray eyes lifted. "Because I don't trust what lives in silence. And you've worn it like skin." A long pause. Then Nyx said, "I didn't hide to deceive. I hid to protect her." "I believe that," Kaelen replied. "But truth, even buried for good reason, still becomes a weapon when it's uncovered too late." Nyx's jaw tightened. "I never meant to be part of this. Not again. And yet here you are." "I followed her. Not the rift, not prophecy, just her." Kaelen studied him. "There was a time I would have called that devotion. Now I wonder if it's just another kind of spell." Nyx didn't flinch. "You think I'm manipulating her?" "I think," Kaelen said slowly, "you are something older than you want to admit, and she is already breaking under the weight of the world. If she gives her heart to you, and you vanish like smoke when this ends." His voice dropped. "She will never forgive you, even if she survives." Nyx lowered his head, the emberlight in his eyes flickering low. "I know. And yet you stay." "I can't leave her," Nyx said. "Even if she never chooses me, even if she never knows me. I would rather burn beside her than live without her." Kaelen was silent for a long time. Then finally, quietly and not without respect, he said, "Then you may not be a beast after all." Nyx almost smiled. "Neither are you." Chapter 12. The Heartglass Tree. The tree hummed like something barely alive. It rose from the ash in solemn silence, its trunk a column of crystal and scorched bark. Fractures glowed along its surface, pulsing with soft golden light, like veins carrying memory instead of blood. The heartglass tree didn't reach for the sky. It listened. Selene stood before it with her hand outstretched, her fingers shaking despite herself. Behind her, the others waited, quiet. Even Lyra had gone still, her illusions folded away. Rhys stood close, unreadable. Kaelen knelt beside the roots, fingers pressed into the ash, muttering ancient protections. Nyx said nothing, but Selene felt his eyes on her, watching, steady, willing her to come back. She took a breath and touched the tree. Pain lanced through her, but not pain like fire or steel, pain like remembering, like a scream buried so deep in her bones that it didn't know how to come out. Her vision turned white, then gold, then black. The vision she stood in the middle of an empty plain. The sky was cracked, just like Veltarian, but worse, open to nothing. Not storm, not flame, just absence. A shape moved before her, shifting shadow and smoke, a being of vastness and grief. No face, no name, just the entity. But it didn't roar, it whispered, "You carry pieces of me." Selene's mouth was dry. "I'm not like you, no. But you could be." She turned. Around her, memories rose from the ground like specters. Her mother's final breath, her father's body broken in the moss, the cold eyes of her commanders at Kareth's Hollow, the days she bled for a cause she didn't understand, the nights she woke screaming, with only Nyx beside her to listen. She dropped to her knees. "You survived," the voice said, "but you did not heal." Selene looked up at the swirling mass. "Neither did I." The wind picked up. Memories collapsed inward. Selene tried to move, but her limbs grew heavy, her heart louder than thought. The entity stepped closer, shifting, just for a second, into a figure she almost recognized, her own silhouette. Tears in the same places, the same lonely fire behind the eyes. Selene gasped. "What are you?" she asked. "A choice you have not made yet." The return she ripped her hand from the bark. The vision shattered. She collapsed to the ground, gasping, the scent of smoke thick in her throat. Nyx was at her side in an instant, catching her before she hit the ash. "Selene!" She gripped his forearm hard, grounding herself on the only thing she knew was real. "I saw it," she whispered. "I saw. Me. But not me. It was—" Kaelen stepped forward, eyes narrow. "The entity?" She nodded. "It didn't attack. It didn't threaten me. It understood me." Lyra stepped in, her voice low. "That's worse, isn't it?" "Yes," Selene said. "Because for a moment, I didn't want to stop it." The others were silent. But Nyx didn't look away from her. He only whispered, so quiet she almost missed it, "You won't become it, Selene. Not while I still have breath." And for the first time, she wasn't sure if her tears were from fear, or something far more dangerous, hope. Truth and trickery, the tree no longer hummed. Its song had faded into silence, and the air around it held a strange stillness, as if even the wind was unsure whether it had just witnessed a miracle or a warning. The others slept in loose rings around the fading firelight. Isolde knelt a short distance away, her hands resting palm up on her knees, her face lifted toward the stars she could not see. Her silver-blind eyes reflected the moonlight like still water. Lyra watched her from the shadows for a long time before stepping into the open. "You always look like you're listening to something no one else can hear," she said, settling cross-legged on the cracked stone beside her. Isolde didn't turn her head. "Maybe I am." Lyra smirked faintly. "Is it voices? The future? Or just guilt dressed up as prophecy?" A pause. Then, calm as ever, Isolde replied, "Sometimes all three." Lyra tilted her head. "Do you see people as they are? Or as they might become?" "Both," Isolde said. "It's why I rarely speak. The truth doesn't always help." Lyra plucked a silver coin from her sleeve, began to roll it across her knuckles. "Good. Because I prefer pretty lies." "I know," Isolde said. "That's why you're so afraid of Selene." The coin paused. Lyra's smile didn't break, but the shadow behind it changed. "I'm not afraid of her." "No," Isolde said softly. "You're afraid of what she makes you remember. The version of yourself who wanted to be more than clever. Who wanted to be known." Lyra was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "Do you see how I end?" Isolde's expression didn't shift, but her voice did. Gentler than before. "You'll vanish in a story that no one believes, but someone will still speak your name. And that will be enough." Lyra stared at her. Then, softly, "You always ruin the moment, you know that?" Isolde's smile was faint. "That's what truth does." Lyra rose, slipping her coin back into her sleeve. "Then I'll stick to illusions. They don't ask so much of me." She turned to leave, but before disappearing, she paused and looked over her shoulder. "If you ever want to trade sight for silence, I'd give anything for the peace you pretend to have." And then she was gone. Isolde stayed where she was, alone beneath the stars she could not see, listening to the wind. Chapter 13. Ghosts of Oaths. The path to Oathbreaker's Hollow was lined with swords. Old, rusted, buried halfway in the earth like gravestones left by forgotten hands. The sky above had dimmed to a bruised violet, and a cold wind stirred dust across the high plain. Each gust carried voices, not screams, but pleas, promises that had never been kept. Selene moved at the head of the group, her silver cloak billowing, her blade sheathed at her hip but thrumming with tension. The others followed close. No one spoke, not even Lyra. Only Kaelen walked with purpose. The hollow came into view as the wind cleared. A fortress carved into a cliffside, black stone cracked and veined with strange light. Its gates stood open, not welcoming, but expecting. "This place is cursed," Rhys muttered. "It stinks of betrayal." "It should," Kaelen said quietly. "It was the place where my order died." They passed through the gate. Inside, silence reigned. The halls were half collapsed, but some structure remained. Ritual chambers, training circles, relic altars shattered to dust. Vines had grown over broken armor. Moss climbed across murals that once depicted unity between druids and veil-bound guardians. Selene paused before one such mural, a painted figure that looked eerily like Nyx, wreathed in smoke and starlight, stood beside a silver-haired warrior. Her own heart skipped. Before she could ask, the air shifted. The doors slammed shut behind them. The shadows thickened, and the ghosts arrived. They rose from the stone like smoke given form, pale echoes with glowing eyes and voices made of memory. One stepped toward Selene. It spoke in her voice. "Who do you serve?" Selene drew her blade. "No one. Not anymore." Another ghost stepped before Rhys. "You promised to burn for us. Why are you still breathing?" One drifted toward Kaelen. "You were meant to protect us." Kaelen lowered his head. "I failed you." The ghosts did not lash out. They waited. "Trials," Isolde whispered. "The Hollow remembers its last oath. We must each confront what we carry, or we do not leave." Selene's grip on her blade tightened. The ghost before her stepped closer. "You left them behind." Selene swallowed. "I saved who I could. You chose Nyx over the world," she faltered. "I didn't know what he was." "You still don't." Nyx stepped forward, but the ghosts didn't acknowledge him. They surrounded Selene now, whispering, "What will you sacrifice next? Who will you abandon? What will your love cost this time?" Selene's knees buckled. The weight of all her choices, past, present, future, pressed down like cold iron. Nyx caught her. Not with fire, not with fury, just presence. "I'm here," he said. The ghosts hissed, flickered, and faded. And something in the hollow shifted. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal of twisted stone. Upon it, a fragment of glowing crystal, a veil shard. But it pulsed with a dim, flickering light. Kaelen approached and touched it, then drew his hand back sharply. "It's half purified," he said. "Its magic is unstable." Lyra tilted her head. "Can we still use it?" "Yes," Kaelen said grimly, "but only one realm can be sealed. One wound. One choice." The group went still. Selene stared at the shard. She thought of the entity, the rift, the burned realms still to come. And then she looked at Nyx. His eyes were already on her. He already knew what she was thinking. One choice. The choice between us, the Hollow, had gone still again. The shard pulsed faintly in its cloth wrapping, now tucked beneath Kaelen's cloak. Even hidden, it sent ripples through the air, like a heart that no longer knew what it was beating for. The others had retreated to the far end of the ruined hall, giving space. Selene sat alone on a low, crumbling wall, hands clasped between her knees, staring at the floor. She didn't hear Nyx approach. She always felt him first. "I didn't expect the Hollow to name me," she said softly. Nyx sat beside her, not touching, but near enough that the space between them felt deliberate. "It didn't name you," he said. "It knew you." She looked over at him. "And you knew this was coming." Nyx didn't deny it. "You've been different," she continued. "Since the tree. Since you caught me. You're quieter, but not just silent, like you're preparing." Still, he said nothing. Selene's voice dropped. "If this ends with one of us gone, I need you to tell me now." Nyx turned to her fully. "And if it does, I'll stop this. I'll find another way." "You won't." Selene stood abruptly, pacing. "You think I'll let you sacrifice yourself?" "I think," Nyx said gently. "You already know I would." She froze. He rose slowly, stepping closer. "You think I don't see it?" he asked. "The way you take everything onto your shoulders. every death, every choice, every shard of the world. Selene's throat tightened. Nyx took another step. But I was born to bear the shadow. Not you. No, she whispered. You were born to walk beside me. A pause. Then, so don't walk away now. He reached out, brushing a gloved thumb across her cheek, catching a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. I won't, he said. But if it comes to choosing between your life or the world's, I will not hesitate. Selene closed her eyes, pain splitting her in two. Then softly, then I'll make sure it never comes to that. And for the first time, she held him, not in desperation, but in defiance. Of fate, of prophecy, of the idea that love was something you had to lose to make it matter. Chapter 14. The bleeding sky. There was no horizon. Only sky, torn, drifting, bleeding light. The realm bent above and below them, fractured like a mirror shattered across the void. Islands of blackened stone floated in midair, connected by crumbling bridges and flickering shards of solid light. The air shimmered with pale fire. Gravity whispered of betrayal. The bleeding sky. One of the last known remnants of the rift's first tier. They stood at the edge of a hovering outcrop, the world shifting beneath their feet. Each step forward felt heavier, like the air was trying to pull their memories from their bones. We stay together, Selene said, her voice low, steady. Her knuckles were white on her blade. Kaelen planted his staff into the floating stone. No illusions here, just truth. Manifested. Amplified. Lyra didn't smile this time. Wonderful. Can't wait to meet my emotional ruin face to face. Rhys gave a tight nod. Let's move before this place remembers what else it wants to show us. They stepped onto the path, and the sky screamed. The moment they crossed the threshold, time broke. Selene felt it first. Her heartbeat slowed, then sped, then fractured. Her feet touched the stone, but her mind drifted backward, through every failure, every silence, every time she had let someone fall. A voice, hers, but not hers, whispered, "You only ever chose what didn't need you." She turned and saw herself, a version of her. Older, empty-eyed, wearing the crescent armor, crowned in blood, alone. Selene staggered. Rhys saw the fire again. His hands were blackened. Screams all around, his blade glowing red with the blood of people who had begged him to protect them. He dropped to his knees. "No, I stayed. I stayed." "But you didn't save them," the flames whispered. Lyra saw her reflection. Not a ghost, but a child, wearing silks too bright, makeup too heavy. A smile forced until it bled. "You like the lies," it said, "because they were the only thing that ever belonged to you." She wept, but without sound, as if even grief had become performative. Kaelen saw trees burning, the grove dying, Isolde's face young and trembling, whispering, "You let me see too much," and Isolde. She saw her own death, not distant, not symbolic. A real moment, a final breath, a body drained beneath a cracked moon. She smiled. "I've seen worse." And Nyx saw Selene, lying still, lying gone. And no amount of shadow or starfire could bring her back. He fell forward onto his hands, the weight of immortality breaking across him. "You loved her," the vision said, "but you never told her the whole truth. And now you don't get to." Selene's voice broke through the storm. "No." She drove her sword into the ground. The vision shattered, and she ran, to Nyx. He was still kneeling, still trembling. She dropped beside him and gripped his hands. "I'm here," she said. "Look at me." He did, and in his eyes she saw what he'd tried so hard to bury, not power, fear. "I can't lose you," he said. "You won't," she whispered, "but you have to trust me, all of me, even the parts that might break." The realm around them pulsed, then cracked. Stone broke away. The rift roared, and the others were pulled forward onto the final floating platform. The heart of the bleeding sky, A throne of light and ruin awaited Dot and beyond it. The rift itself gaping open like a mouthful of stars. After the fall, they sat at the edge of the floating shard, just beyond the shattered bridge of the bleeding sky. Below them, there was no ground, only starlit void. The wind was still. The sky bled softly behind them, red and gold streaking through the cracked atmosphere like veins in broken crystal. Selene hadn't spoken in a while. She held her blade across her knees, still scorched from the last fight, her fingers stained with ash. Her shoulders were slumped in a way they never were around the others. Only Lyra sat beside her, close but not too close. "I saw myself," Lyra said finally, 10 years old. Smiling like I meant it. Selene looked over, surprised. Was it real? Lyra shrugged, twirling a silver ring around her finger. "Does it matter?" "A paw's pain is always real," she added, "even when it's dressed up like a memory." Selene studied her. "You always act like none of this touches you." Lyra's smile flickered. "Acting is the only magic I was ever taught." They fell quiet again. The stars pulsed far below. Then Lyra said, so softly it almost wasn't a joke, "You and Nyx. You moved like one person back there." Selene looked down. "It wasn't always like that." "No," Lyra said. "It was never supposed to be, was it?" A beat, then Selene asked, "What did your reflection say?" Lyra's voice caught just a little. "That every version of me still dies alone." Selene turned fully now, reaching out to gently place her hand over Lyra's. "No version of you dies while I'm still breathing." Lyra looked at her. The grin returned. But this time it was real. Tired, grateful. "Careful," she said. "I might believe you." Selene smiled faintly. Good. They stayed like that a little longer. 2 women, both survivors, both scarred. But for a moment, not alone. Chapter 15. The Unspoken Name. The world had grown quiet again. Not peacefully quiet. Reverently. The group stood on the last floating isle, where the fragments of the bleeding sky ended, and the final descent began. Beneath them, the rift stretched like an open wound across the cosmos. It pulsed with violet light, a spiral of shattered dimensions and broken memories. At its edge stood the final gate, veiled in burning mist, humming with ancient, unreadable energy. They had made it. But the cost still waited. Selene stood at the edge, her silver hair swept by strange wind, her hand resting near the hilt of her blade. The others were behind her, Kaelen, Isolde, Rhys, Lyra, all quiet, all changed. But it was Nyx who stepped forward to stand beside her. She didn't look at him yet, because she already felt what was coming. He watched the rift. His voice was low. "It's calling to me." Selene's fingers curled. "Because you're bound to it?" "No," he said. "Because I'm part of it." That made her look. "What do you mean?" He turned to face her fully. For once, he didn't look like the Shadow Wolf or the Guardian. He looked like a man on the edge of choosing his end. Before the rift tore open, he said, "I was not just a guardian of the veil, I was the veil. Or part of it, a vessel for the balance between shadow and light." Selene's breath caught. I was never meant to live this long," Nyx continued. "When the entity was born from sorrow, something had to hold the wound closed. I was that something." He paused, ember light flickering in his eyes. "When you found me in the grove, I had already been fading. The others were gone. Dead. Forgotten. I bound myself into a simpler form to escape becoming like the entity. A wolf. A whisper. You chose life." "I chose you," Nyx said, "and when you gave me a name, you anchored me." Selene stepped back, shaken. "So all this time, the reason the entity feels familiar, the reason the burn pulls at you, it's because we were once the same," Nyx said. Silence crashed between them. Behind them, no one dared speak. Finally, Selene whispered, "And now?" Nyx's voice was soft. "Now the wound opens again, and something must hold it closed, something that remembers how not to unravel." Selene looked at him. She saw it now. He wasn't a wolf, wasn't a man, wasn't even a guardian. He was a boundary, and he had been breaking ever since she brought him back. Tears pricked her eyes. "No," she said, "you don't get to make that choice alone." He stepped closer. "I'm not," he said. "I'm asking you to let me." She shook her head. "You saved me. You stayed when everyone else left. You never asked for anything. And now I'm asking for this." Selene turned away, fists clenched, her voice hoarse. "If you speak my name like that again, I won't be able to let you go." Nyx stepped forward. He whispered her name. "Selene." She broke. She turned, wrapped her arms around him, held him as if her grip alone could stop the unraveling. "You don't have to die to prove you matter," she said. "I don't want to die," Nyx replied. "Then don't. But I do want the world to live." And in that moment, the rift blinked. It felt them, and somewhere inside the storm, the entity stirred. We who remain the wind stirred gently along the outer edge of the floating isle. The others had scattered, resting, watching the rift, or simply breathing in the last stillness they might know. Rhys stood watch alone, staring into the open stars. The rift pulsed below. Not a tear anymore, a mouth. He didn't flinch. Not when it called to him, not when it whispered what he could have been, what he still might become. Not until Isolde spoke. "You burn quieter now," she said from behind him. He didn't turn. "You see everything. I guess that includes the fire." "I don't see fire," Isolde replied. "I see grief wearing armor." Rhys let out a low breath, almost a laugh. "That obvious? To me, yes. To the rest? You still look like a sword." He turned toward her slowly. "And you? Still feel like a weapon?" Isolde tilted her head. "Sometimes I think I'm a warning more than a woman." Rhys stepped closer, gaze sharp but steady. "You gave a prophecy that said one of us dies, one of us breaks, one chooses. I did. Did you see your own end in that vision?" Isolde was quiet a long moment. Then, "I never see myself clearly. That's part of the curse, or the gift." "Then how do you live with it?" She smiled faintly. "I don't live with it. I walk beside it." Rhys looked away, jaw tight. "You ever think, maybe we weren't meant to survive this?" Isolde turned her face toward the void. Her voice was almost a whisper. Survival was never the point. Being witnessed was. Rhys studied her, truly studied her, all her silence, her strength, her steady, lonely calm. "You're the only one who doesn't fear death." "I do," she said softly. "But I fear dying without meaning far more." Rhys took a step closer. "You won't..." And for a moment, as stars bled across the sky behind them, he took her hand, not for comfort, for remembrance. They would not let each other be forgotten, not in life, not in sacrifice. Chapter 16. The Sundered Choir. The rift did not open, it received. When Selene stepped through the final gate, it wasn't pain she felt, or heat, or wind. It was music, if it could be called that, not harmony, but 100 overlapping voices, singing fragments of half-remembered songs. Joyful tones warped by sorrow, cries woven into lullabies. Every note was unfinished, every chorus broken. This was the entity's mind, a realm built not from matter, but from memory. She stumbled forward onto a pathway made of light and ash. The sky above wasn't sky at all, but reflected memories, stitched together from all who had entered the rift. She saw her father's face, a child's scream, Kaelen kneeling in rot, Isolde screaming in a forgotten tongue, and Nyx, standing alone in a field of stars. The others landed behind her, each breathless, disoriented. Kaelen braced against his staff. "It's not a world." Isolde whispered, "It's a mind. One that's forgotten where it ends." Rhys was already drawing his sword. "I don't care what it is. We get in. We end it." "No," Selene said. "We don't end it. We understand it." And the moment she spoke, the mirrors rose. Tall panes of glass emerged from the ground like teeth. Dozens, hundreds, each glowing with internal light, and in every one, a version of them. Selene stepped toward the closest. Inside the glass stood herself, but different, clad in black crescent armor, eyes cold, empty, the embodiment of a perfect warden who obeyed every command, who never questioned, who never loved. Selene stared at her reflection. "I could have been you." The mirror version smiled. "You still could." A sudden crack jolted through the mirror, then through Selene. Elsewhere, Kaelen stood before a vision of himself surrounded by trees, dead, scorched, a world he could not protect. His runes faded, his voice silenced, a guardian without a forest. Lyra's reflection was laughing, wearing a noblewoman's mask, surrounded by admirers, but alone. Her eyes hollow behind glamour. "You always needed an audience." It whispered, "Not anymore," Lyra muttered, and shattered the glass with a flick of her wrist. Rhys stood before himself in golden armor, basked in fire, worshipped as a hero, but no one stood behind him. He was king of nothing. He punched through the mirror with a roar. And Nyx. He stood before a mirror that did not show him. It showed Selene, weeping over his body. A world saved, but without him in it. He didn't move. He didn't speak. The entity whispered around him, "This is your future. This is her peace. But it doesn't include you." Nyx bowed his head. He did not shatter the mirror. He stepped through it. Selene turned as she felt him go. "Nyx!" She ran after him, but the mirrors were collapsing, glass shattering into starlight. The others shouted, scattered, pulled apart in the chaos. And then the realm went still. Selene stood in a field of broken reflection, alone, and ahead of her, standing at the center of the dreamscape, the entity. But not monstrous, not screaming. Just a tall, shadowed figure with her own eyes. And Nyx's voice. "You cannot fix me. You cannot love me back into wholeness." Selene stepped forward. "I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to remind you. You were never alone." The version that obeyed the last mirror hadn't shattered. Selene stood before it, barefoot on a floor of starlit glass, the air humming with broken music. The reflection didn't move, not exactly. It watched, same face, same hair bound tight in a silver clasp, same eyes, but colder, calculated. She wore the ceremonial armor of the High Crescent, shining, polished, lifeless. Selene stepped closer. The mirror Selene tilted her head just slightly. "You could have been me." "I was," Selene whispered. "For a while." The reflection smiled, small and sharp. "You obeyed. You protected the world. You silenced your grief. You locked away your love." Selene's breath hitched. "You were strong," the mirror said. "Until you broke." Selene's voice trembled. "I had to choose. And now you'll choose again. Him. Or the world." "No," Selene said, louder now. "That's not the choice. It always is." Selene stepped forward until she stood inches from the glass. "I know what it feels like to give everything and be told it's not enough. I know what it means to follow and forget who you are." Her hand touched the mirror. "I don't want to be enough for the world anymore," she said. "I want to be true, to myself, to him." The mirror's smile faltered. "Then you will lose him." Selene shook her head. "No." And she pressed her palm harder against the glass, and it didn't crack. It faded. Her reflection dissolved into dust and stars. Selene was left standing alone, and this time it didn't feel like failure. It felt like freedom. The offering the dream realm had no shape here. only void light, soft and endless, like standing inside a forgotten breath. Nyx knelt at the edge of a lake that wasn't water. It was memory. It moved like thought, rippling with reflections of lives never lived. At its center stood a figure cloaked in shifting shadow, the entity. Not monstrous, not how the others saw it. To Nyx, it looked like himself, once. Before, the entity turned, its face unreadable, its voice a soundless echo. "You came willingly." Nyx nodded. "I was born of the same wound," he said. "I don't want it to grow." The entity stepped closer. "You were the seal. The balance. Why did you leave that duty?" "I didn't leave it," Nyx whispered. "I found something more important to protect." The entity regarded him. "The warden." Nyx closed his eyes. "Yes." The shadows pulsed gently. "You would trade yourself for her?" "I would trade myself," Nyx said, "so that she never again believes she has to choose between love and duty." Silence stretched between them. Then the entity moved, its form flickering through sorrow, fire, and broken stars. "You are not unlike me. But you chose love instead of rage. I chose her. She will grieve." Nyx looked up, eyes steady. "She will live." The entity tilted its head, and for the first time, it did not roar. It listened. Chapter 17. The cradle of echoes, the world breathed silence. Selene stepped through the veil of light into a chamber unlike anything she had ever seen. There were no walls, no sky, only echoes. Memory itself had become the structure, fragments of lives drifting through the air like dust motes. A child's laugh, a dying oath, a blade dropped in despair. And at the center of it all, a lake of still, starless water, and rising from it, the entity. Its form towered but did not threaten. It shifted constantly, feminine, formless, faceless, then back again, like grief trying to remember what it used to be. Before it, suspended just above the surface, was Nyx. His body was bowed, caught in coils of shadow light, unmoving but alive. Threads of energy pulled from him, weaving into the entity like memory being drained. Selene didn't hesitate. She ran to the edge. "Let him go!" The entity turned its head, slow and deliberate. It spoke without mouth, without sound. "You came to end me. But I have already ended. I am not a god. I am a grief, a wound that remembered too long." Selene's voice cracked, then let go. "He came willingly." Selene shook her head, stepping into the shallows. "He always does. He always chooses to vanish so others don't have to." "So did I." The entity raised a hand, light fractured. Suddenly, Selene was surrounded by herself, 1,000 versions, each one alone, each one cold. In every one, Nyx was gone. "This is what you become when you choose duty without love." Selene trembled. "Then I choose him." "You choose the world. You must." "No," she said, voice breaking. "The world isn't saved by sacrifice. It's saved by connection. And I won't let him be your mirror." The shadows trembled. Nyx stirred faintly. The entity paused. "You would offer me forgiveness?" Selene stepped closer, tears in her eyes. Sword on the ground, hands empty. "No, I offer you release." She reached forward, not to strike, but to touch, and her hand passed into shadow and met skin. For a breathless moment, the entity was still, then it wept. The shadows peeled away. Light unraveled like petals burned to gold. The lake shattered, and Nyx fell. Selene caught him. He collapsed into her arms, eyes fluttering open, ember light fading to soft glow. "Selene," he whispered. "I'm here," she breathed, holding him close. "I'm here." The sky broke, but not with fire, with light. The entity vanished, not destroyed, not slain, but released. And for the first time since the rift opened, the world began to mend. Chapter 18. The last choice, the rift did not roar. It sighed, as if the breath it had held for centuries was finally released. The sky above the cradle was whole again, veined with pale gold. The ground, once fractured memory, was now earth, quiet, waiting. The entity was gone, but the scar it left behind still burned. In Selene's arms, Nyx stirred, his body weak, fading at the edges like a shadow touched by morning. The others had returned, stepping cautiously through the dissolving dreamscape. Isolde knelt near them, her blindfold fluttering. Kaelen, silent. Rhys, still. Lyra, crying softly and pretending she wasn't. The veil shard pulsed in Kaelen's hands, half purified, half enough. Selene looked up, her voice quiet. "It's not done yet, is it?" Kaelen shook his head. "No, the wound has opened. The entity is gone, but the breach remains." Selene swallowed. "What do we do?" Isolde spoke next, voice soft and final. "One must carry the shard into the center of the wound, one last time, and stay." Silence. Nyx stirred again, trying to rise. Selene held him down gently. "No, I was made for this," he whispered. "You were made for more than being used up." Nyx smiled faintly. "You gave me a name, a life, but that doesn't mean I was meant to keep it." "And I wasn't meant to lose you," she said, her voice shaking. Isolde stepped forward. "There is another way." They turned to her. If the shard is carried by two, the rift can be sealed, but at a cost. "What cost?" Selene asked. "Both are changed," Isolde said. "Bound to the wound, not dead, but other. Neither fully of this world." Nyx looked at Selene, and for the first time since the grove, she didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, took his hand. "Then we do it together." They stood at the edge of the wound. The shard hovered between their palms, light trembling like breath held too long. Nyx looked at her. "I should have told you sooner." Selene smiled. "You didn't need to, but he said it anyway. I love you." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I know." She leaned forward, kissed him, and together they stepped into the rift. They did not die, they did not return, but the wound closed. The sky sealed, and Veltarion, at last, began to heal. Epilogue. The last starfall. The first winter after the rift closed was the gentlest in memory. No storms, no ash, only snowfall, soft and silent, the way it used to be, before the world cracked open. At the edge of the restored Vale Grove, where the trees hummed with cautious life, a circle of stone stood where the breach had once howled. Moss now curled along their edges. Flowers had begun to bloom between them, and in the center of the circle, a tree grew, tall, silver-barked. Its leaves shimmered like falling stars. Its roots ran deep into the earth, but pulsed faintly with light and shadow, braided like thread. They called it the Warden's Tree. No one tended it. It tended the world. At its base, Isolde knelt, fingertips brushing the soil. Her eyes were still blind, but she smiled, because she could feel it pulsing beneath her hand. Selene, Nyx, not dead, not gone, just changed. She rose slowly and walked back toward the hill where the others waited. Kaelen, older now, his skin growing rougher with bark each year. Rhys, still fierce but softened by rebuilding. Lyra, her illusions faded, her laughter real now. They watched the wind stir the trees' leaves, each one falling like a spark of memory. The world remembered, and that was enough. Some nights, when the moons align, when the stars fall just right, people say they see a silver figure beneath the tree and a shadow beside her. Sometimes they're dancing. Sometimes they're just watching the sky. But always they're together, bound by choice, by love, by the moment one name was spoken aloud, and another was never forgotten.